Thanks, robot
Go.
lady. Um, yeah, so for those of you that are new to Jam Club, we always start with a prompt and we end up somewhere else. But this is where we'll start. Um, we've been talking about the power of stories in and around a whole bunch of topics across Jam Club. Devin and I get to sit back and actually look at all the themes that keep coming up every time we talk about a thing. And that helps inform maybe where we'll go next. But we wanted to do something a little fun and something a little out there along those lines. So we asked this question: what is the purpose of a fictional story? And we're gonna talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Do you want me to just jump in or do you have
Do it.
more? Yeah.
And
Okay.
keep the guys, this is conversational, so please jump in, ask questions. This is a fully interactive talk.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And Nick, please push on me when I am on a rant that you're more interested in than others. But Nick came to me and he we've been talking about doing something together, and there was you know the idea behind this talk is talking about world building, and specifically he came to me talking about sci-fi world building, and I kind of said let's pull back a little bit to start, because you have to ask yourself why are you building these worlds, what is the point of that, and then really that falls into a larger bucket, which is why do we tell fictional stories. And it is ultimately, just to give the obvious answer, it is to tell us something about ourselves. It's to give us a perspective on the reality that we all live in and share. And so, I think that is the context within this conversation is happening. So that is the place to kind of ground us all, I guess. Um, Especially when you're talking about, folks who are not traditionally trying to use these tools for storytelling. They're trying to apply these storytelling tools to other ways of moving through the world and relating to each other and solving the problems that a only Jam Club can. So I wanted
I went
to
the wrong way.
start from there. Um, Nick, do you want to tell us about the slide you were just on, the futurist
Sure.
quote that you
Oh my
just
god, I can't go backwards.
Okay, well, we could just speed run this.
Hold on, I'm doing it. There it is. I did it. They put me in charge of Zoom. They never put me in charge of Zoom.
This is
Um,
You're doing great,
well,
bud.
we started talking about we started with sci-fi, as Justin said, and it was really based out of we want to do something fun. Maybe we should just talk about science fiction. Um, but really, it does come down to the speculation of other worlds, and the rules that go into playing that. I found this quote by a science fiction expert. The history of humanity's changing attitudes towards space and time, and the history of our growing understanding of the universe and the position of our species in that universe is ultimately where science fiction kind of came from. Like you don't find a lot of that kind of speculation um, too early on without it's a lot more fantasy in the past. Once the technology started pushing things forward, it's kind of where that came from.
that's really interesting, and thank you for that. I think that leads into what I'm going to say next, which is that uh, sci-fi is a genre of where you put books in a bookshelf or where you put things for your recommended next stream. It's not like a particular um, world building isn't exclusive to that genre or even to that and adjacent genres like fantasy. You see on the screen The Americans, which is a show that I worked on, and this is a show that is steeped in a fictional world um, that has tropes of spy versus spy and the America in the 1980s, and all of the Cold War strife that is happening. But ultimately, all of that is used in order to tell a story that many of us can relate to, because it is a story about a marriage. It is a story about something we all experience in different ways, that relationship with another person, that we are all, trying to move through truthfully, but holding on to all of these secrets. And are there agendas, and where do we meet each other, and how do we accomplish our dreams? And I think that when you talk about world building, and I wrote it here, so I'm just going to read it off. It's what you're doing when you recontextualize our shared lived experience to give us a new perspective on ourselves and the world we inhabit. Man, it sounds better when I'm not reading it, but I really do truly believe that that is what we're talking about, is taking something familiar, turning it on its ear, so that we can crack it open in a way that allows us to see new solutions to familiar problems. Um, and if you go to the next slide, Nick, you'll see one other thing that I can carry into this conversation is a series I just completed. These are books for kids, and a trilogy of novels called Zombie Season. And in these books, there are zombies, but they're not the kind of zombies you might see in other fiction. They're not hungry for human brains. They devour anything and everything in their path. They emerge when the weather gets hot from the ground, and they become more and more powerful as the story goes on. They are a very simple allegory for in book one, it is an allegory for wildfires, and these kids are dealing with that in California. But then that you see that the way that they are working through the problem in their individual lives is interacting with other problems people are having other places. For instance, in book two, which is called Dead in the Water, the zombies begin to emerge from the ocean because, of course, the ways that we are operating as humans has changed the physical dynamics of the oceans that we all depend on for our lives. And it kind of goes for more from there. But I think that for me, what was important in building this world was creating a way for kids uh, to think through something that's much larger than them, and to take it to a human scale where these things that are larger than us are not quite so daunting, because you are trying to solve ultimately what zombies are great for. And I could talk about this all day, but what zombies are great for is taking an inhumanly sized problem and bringing it down to the scale of humanity, because ultimately the bad guys are us, and so we are trying to change ourselves in order to solve a problem that is that we all share. So I think that if you can kind of triangulate with those two stories about what I think is important in world building, I offer those as examples of that. But I'll tell you lots more as we go. And please jump in if you have questions, or just hold on to them, and we'll make sure there's room. As we, Nick, I'd like to offer you an opportunity to push a little further if you're interested, but otherwise you can just keep going.
No, but
To
Justin, where did you get the inspiration for Zombie Season?
Zombies are, I mean, again, I could talk a lot about zombies because I've thought about them for a while. This is actually not the first project that I've attempted to use them as the motivator for what keeps the story engine going.
But I mean,
Um,
outside of zombies, like what was the real world spark that caused the idea?
are you asking this because your son is a named character in this book series?
No,
Um,
that's not why I'm asking.
yeah, sure.
But
Uh,
but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it you were here during fire season.
yes. Um, this is this story began from that place um, of trying to think about what the reality of living through these huge. I mean, a number of you know this more intimately than I do. But as I was publicizing these books, which all came out in the last couple of years, it was a series of like on the nose climate, mini disasters. Like I couldn't go on tour because of the wildfires in Canada, and then I get to the school and they had to send all the kids home because they didn't have air conditioning, and it was 100 degrees in November, and such and so forth, that actually makes it very hard to think of this outside of the context that we are currently living. Of course, it is totally fictional. There are not zombies that are going to come and destroy your whole town, um, but it is just like 1 degree away from the reality that we all share. So I hope that it's fun too.
It's very fun. I highly recommend it. They're good reads. Um,
Thank you. But we're here to talk about the ways that we build these worlds. So enough about me, unless you would like to hear more. You want to go to the next slide? There's some of our
now
we're jumping right into it. I thought we had
we're gonna do work now.
Oh, okay.
Now it's our turn.
Okay. Yeah, well, this is a good time. You want to jump
This
in?
is the fun. We're gonna do work. We're gonna do warm up. Devin's gonna break us into groups. Because I don't have the ability to do that. And what we're going to do for about 15 minutes is choose an example of a familiar science fiction world. It could be anything, something you just watched, something you're a fan of. But really, what we're going to talk about along those lines is, what are the speculative elements at the core of the story? What's the human story that unfolds in the landscape of that core world? And how does it heighten the reality or how does the heightened reality make the human story resonate differently than it would otherwise? It's really focused on not just the story of the world, but how the world is a character within that story, and is central to what happens and what we learn from our characters. Am I getting that right?
Yes. I think that, yeah, I mean, this is just a way of kind of breaking down the whole into several parts. That's the whole of it here. It's not, it's kind of looking at the inside of the glockenspiel and seeing how the parts interact. I can do an example if that's helpful.
Yeah, please do it.
Sure. Let's jump in with okay. Let's just because it's not exactly. Let's just do Lord of the Rings. Okay. Let's just jump in with it's fantasy, but speculative is really the guiding principle here. It is. All right. Let's not do that. I don't know. I'm now just jumping in this.
Let's go to breakout rooms. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Let's do it in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll catch you in there.
Great.
How'd that go?
Yes, Devin. I thought that was fantastic.
100%. Well, now before we go on, I want to know what everyone talked about. We had a great conversation.
You want to go first, Nick?
Oh, we talked about the Matrix. And how sometimes a cookie is just a cookie. But no, I mean there were a lot of tropes about it's a very Jesus-y movie. There was a lot of that kind of story arc. The chosen one, and ultimately it was kind of very much about self-realization and awakening and the choice of awareness. And we talked about so many other things. But someone else go.
Well, I'll connect that dot because I think that we kind of started out a little bit talking about kind of the monomyth as well, but we moved quickly into putting that in conversation with other very strong narrative drives, because really, one of the things that makes stories work is having a strong perspective and having a very a passionate storytelling voice. And I can that's a little that's a lot of words, but I think that what I'd like to get at with that is that there are there are so many different ways to tell a story, and it really, we have such great individual philosophies that different writers have, and when you are building a world, you get to mess with the rules of that world in pretty profound ways that change how we relate to the text and what we carry away from it. So that's one thing that I was very grateful to get out of that, and to pin that for the next part that I will get into about the kind of guiding principles of world building.
One of the things we talked about that I just want to like throw in after hearing that is that there's something really special about when you're watching a movie or reading a book that is set in one of these very out there, very different than the world we live in worlds. But the ability to find things that are familiar to people and the reader to tie in and create that empathy. So like we talked about the cookie in the Matrix, like food is such a great connector to what we as the reader, understand and attach to our own life and our own experience. And so like the ways that a lot of these worlds build in things that are like human-like in that way, or build in these things that connect, it's just a way to build empathy and connect and like help the reader feel like they could be in that world, even if that world is so, so different than the world that they are in currently.
It's an interesting tool in a way, right? Because you're kind of trying to stretch the world, get people to get excited about things or be curious, and then you're trying to make it relatable again, right? And we were in our group talking a little bit about how just, the Matrix was really relational. A lot of, that first one in particular Peter was mentioning was kind of rooted in that. And yeah, I think that that's certainly one piece. Rebecca also touched on just like she reads a lot, and authors from Africa and different places where they have different, lore and backgrounds just sort of creates um, just a different color palette to work with, right? And so we're kind of like often in a lot of the media that we consume, kind of stuck in the same tropes of elves and goblins or whatever it is, and it's just like, wait, there's like so much more there. And so, but it still probably wouldn't work if there wasn't like a human connection or, piece there that's kind of driving folks' ability to tap into it. So anyway, anything else anybody wants to add before we keep going?
Yeah, I can add. I think that kind of coming from my perspective, I'll do it, Lucia. Uh, for me, it's not really a different world. I can kind of compare it as if it's the unconscious that allows us to create, kind of take all the content from the conscious, break the rules, and create something new. And in a way, create narratives that allow us to touch, like create a distance that allows us to touch subjects that otherwise we wouldn't, because we will feel criticized or we will feel defensive or and we were speaking in our group about how all the like zombies and vampires and all that many times represent our like our relationship with destruction, self-destruction, relationships, lust, hate, all that. But it just gives us a shape that is more digestible. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, that Lucia, I think that's really really important, is connecting it. And Liz, you've both hit on something that is really important, which is slightly ahead of the class, because all of these worlds exist to put people in them, and those people are people that we need to relate to, because ultimately, if these worlds are going to become real, it will become real through our perception of them, our appreciation of them, and our ability to carry them forward with us. When we're, we're talking about stuff now that stayed with us. And so what made it do that? It wasn't that it was a different world. It was that the people living in that world meant something to us. And that's the at the end of the day, that's what's important to not lose track of. All of these are tools in order to perform that transaction, that transformation of us as we read, as we watch, as we are in the theater or playing the video game. All of these are like ways for us to opportunities for us to be changed by the experience. So I think we're all kind of honing in on we're triangulating a central what's important about this, and I'm grateful that we have all gotten to that place. And I think that, Nick, if you're ready to go to the next slide, I am, unless there's other stuff you want to say.
Oh, good. I hijacked the presentation. It's me now.
Oh, copy
I'm
that.
in charge.
Sorry. Of course I have
Right.
it.
So we've talked about some of the philosophical or the what the end of the process looks like, when you are able to share it with another person. But when you're building the world, there's no wrong way to do it, except for the one thing that you can't do when you're building a world or telling any kind of story, and that is break the faith that you have with your audience. And of course, there are ways that you can play with that. We've talked about unreliable narrators already a little bit tonight. Those are great. Those are fair game. But when you're built, so let's just take it away from those exceptions and talk about the generality. For the music composition folks here tonight, you have to learn all the rules before you know how to break them. That's all I'm saying here. So in this world where you have to learn the rules, you also get to make the rules. So when you're changing something about the world we all know and making it a different place, because now we have sublight space travel, or now we have telepathy, or now we have cities on the bottom of the ocean. Whatever it is that separates our world from the world we're creating, or zombies that emerge from the ground when the weather gets hot in the summer. That's your rule. You make that rule, and then your audience says, "Yeah, I got it." You can't then, because you backed yourself into a corner narratively, or because wouldn't it be cool if there was then a way that I could break that rule. You can't change the game in the middle, or people will tap out. And I think that's the one thing you can't do when you're telling any kind of story, especially when you're asking them to make these big leaps and trust you to go to an unfamiliar world, where imagine if you were writing a murder mystery, and you were just kind of making it up as you go, and you didn't know who the murderer was, and then at the end it just kind of falls flat. That's kind of what you can't do. You'll never get your audience's trust back afterwards. But what I will take a step back from that and put that into context. When you're writing the story, you get as many chances as you want to get it right. So you'll have your zero draft, you'll have your 0.01 draft. You'll have 1,000 more between there and whatever is, quote, done. And done is not perfect. It is all an approximation. It is all Zeno's paradox. You're always going halfway towards the goal and never actually crossing the finish line. However, because you are not trying to converse with a blank wall, you're actually trying to converse with a human who is receiving that and adding something to the world that you have put on the page. In that discourse is a transformation of what is in your head into their head. So you get some flexibility with that. And the way that I, through my career, have thought about telling stories is that I'm trying to play the game Jenga, and you can't beat Jenga. You will always get to the point where the tower falls down, and that's not like you lost Jenga. That's just how the game ends every single time. But every time that, if you put that into the context of writing, when you lose the game of Jenga, it just means that all of the threads you're trying to weave, all of the different juggling acts that you have going on, it doesn't work out for whatever reason. And then you take all of those pieces that you've already figured out and you put them back together into a tower. You put them into a configuration that makes the tower higher. It allows you to have more tension. You have a better idea of where the characters are going to lead you and what the breaking point will be, and you can move past it to the next problem that will cause the tower to fall down again. So really, I think that in terms of big picture, it isn't more complicated than that. It's all very complex, but it's not complicated. Does that make sense? It really is a simple game of building trust with the audience as you take a very strong viewpoint and continue to try and make that point in a way that will reach a person who is going to be affected by that and carry that forward with them. Nick, would you like to jump in and push on any of that, or do you want to keep going? Oh, Devin's in charge.
Oh, I just feel like that's the segue. Like the
Yes.
reveal here is
Yes.
that's what Jam Club is, in a way. We're creating a space. We're setting up some rules. These are the rules. We're trying not to break them, right? Like if we acted completely in a different way, then people would be like, fuck this place. This is some bullshit. So anyway, we had a meta moment as we were kind of prepping the talk of just like, I guess this is kind of like what we're doing here. So
well, to the theme of this, the world building isn't just for storytelling. It is for relating, for relating between humans. And I mean, truly, what is on this slide is I couldn't come up with an empirically better set of ways to build a fulfilling world, fictional world. Because as a person creating a story, the building trust is the number one thing. It's the number one thing, and valuing what the other person is bringing to the discourse is important too. Even though the reader doesn't get to say anything, they are part of the discourse. It isn't just talking to you. The first draft of the story you should write for yourself, but everything after that is attempting to reach someone. And how do you reach someone? All of these, everything after that on the list: be respectful and present, be generous, focus on impact, embrace diversity, use the space, and have fun. I mean, there are probably other ones, but that is the list that I'd like to focus on. Adam, do you have something you'd like to contribute?
Yeah, along with what Rebecca said about fiction developing empathy, and then what you're talking about with like readers kind of being a part of the story building, is really interesting. And I'm curious people's thoughts on if that is why, what is her name? J.K. Rowling has had such like a visceral reaction from her fan base versus others who have done like similar things, like have gone like turf and all that kind of thing. because she had such a massive and deep like well of trust in that fan base, and then basically like projected a lot of what they were trying to introduce into that world that they were a part of. Yeah, like that, what you were talking about kind of like made me think about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a tragic, awful situation. And I'd prefer not to make this all about J.K. Rowling,
Yeah.
but I think that it is an intimate relationship in, spending so much time with characters, and, like separating the art from the artist is hard,
Well,
especially
like drawing it away from her, like if we look at Star Wars or something, like when Disney goes out of its way to make sure to include other people that have traditionally not been represented in Star Wars or something like that, especially leading roles. Um, like there's some backlash, but for the most part, a lot of the reason they're being included is because the fan base has asked for that and Disney's responding to it. And eventually, like the upset people get drowned out by the majority of fans who have asked for these types of things or who are happy to see it. I'll let Liz talk.
Well, I
please.
think it's sure fans are asking for it, but I think what is also happening is companies are realizing there's a lot of money to be made by sharing diverse stories and having different types of perspectives on screen. Like, wasn't Crazy Rich Asians like one of the top grossing movies of that year? I forget exactly the numbers, but it was like it was because that crowd hadn't really seen themselves since the Joy Luck Club. And it's so powerful to see yourself or people like you represented. And like there's riches in the niches, like there's a lot of ability to find an audience because they've never seen themselves represented. And I think to bring it back to the JK thing, like what I think is amazing is even in her why is she doing that meltdown? She's still created this world that is now bigger than her and endures forever. And just to see what fans have done with her world and with her characters, it's beautiful to see how they're like, yeah, well, fuck you. We're gonna still do this. And because we still love this, And yeah, you see that with Star Wars and other things too. So I think there's power in creating a world and creating characters that resonate, and you have to be able to let it go too, if it gets to a certain echelon.
Liz, I think that what you just said is crucial. Is that the story, you get your shot as a writer, and then it belongs to the audience. And yes, there are corporations involved, and yes, the author still exists, but after you do your thing, it's not yours anymore. And the the best thing is probably to just let it exist and be real in the world. And it's the best thing the best possible outcome is people take ownership of that world that came out of your brain, and it changes how they craft their lives, and how our shared world becomes a better place because of the discourse that happened and the community that found itself through that discourse. And I think that that's the most important part of this, because with the intersection of art and commerce is a complicated thing that is a different topic than what we're diving into. But the heart of it, the soul of it, is something that didn't exist before, now exists for real people in the real world. And that's the point. That's why you do this work. Yeah, Peter, you want to jump in?
It just strikes me that when you one of the trusts that she built, and not so much talking about her now as the world that she created, that's it's a little different to me, because I was thinking when we were talking about zombies and Star Trek and the Matrix and all of these things came up. It's always interesting. The stories are finite, and within a finite construct, it's interesting to see who gets externalized specifically and who gets externalized less specifically. So I guess what I mean by that is in the Matrix, there's a construct by which when you're in the Matrix, the entire world is the enemy. And so it allows you to attach specific loyalty to this small group of people, right? And follow them very specifically. And then you got the red shirts in Star Trek, right? And we all know about the red shirts in Star Trek and that they're doomed. And that's the deal, right? Because it's necessary to focus in on this particular group of characters. And in Star Wars, you have the stormtroopers who also, until much, much, much later in the franchise, really are never delved into, personally. They're a feature of this world. But it's very different in the Harry Potter world because there's so many individuals that are reflected in that particular world without, I think, the same volume of in specific characters. It's actually a group of, there's not even orcs in the same way because even the villains are quite specific. And I wonder if that's one of the elements of trust that the audience felt, regardless of wherever she's saying or doing. But I wonder if that's one of the trust. Everybody kind of can find their person in the Harry Potter world because so many individual people are potentially reflected. Not everybody, but there's a lot more than that. Dementors, fair, totally.
Well,
Got it. All right.
Peter,
Thank you,
Peter,
Anna.
no. I'd like to press on that just one degree and say and repeat a point Rebecca made before she left, which is that Harry Potter is a book, and the other things you mentioned are movies. And I think that when you have the palette of a novel, or in fact 7 novels, you can work differently and develop character differently and develop that relationship that the audience has to character
Sure.
differently. And books do have a different way of creating empathy than other forms of storytelling do.
But Tolkien, who I adore and had even deeper world, he still did it with the orcs in the book. It's still a grand depersonalization of a swath of character.
You're talking about specifically the othering of individual groups.
I guess, yeah, or I mean, because othering is a very dramatic, like, dramatic's the wrong way to say it. Othering is a very pointed way of doing it, but there's also an in focus, out of focus thing. So I wouldn't want to make it just othering. It's just interesting to me who's in focus and who's out of focus within the concept of a finite story. And it can go as far as othering a group, and it also can go as like just like a particular lens that only sees certain things sharply.
I think that I just say that my distinct preference as a person who both tells stories and consumes stories is that I want to know, like, my favorite character to write is the bad guy. I think that I want to know why they do what they do as much as I want to know, or maybe even more than what the heroes are doing. And when I don't get that out of a work of fiction, I'm a little disappointed.
Mhm.
And you can't have a story that does everything. So people have different priorities, and I think that one of the things that I am happy to take away from our group, our breakout room, is that the thing that I value is a very strong narrative voice, a very strong perspective that is going to grab my hand as an audience member and bring me to what they think is the important thing that they want to share with me. And sometimes that is villains are really interesting people, and sometimes that is there's a very different part of the world they want to focus on. And I think that when you're talking about these big monomyth stories, which Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and the big properties that we all know are, they tend to have those traits in common. Is the lazy way of addressing the point that you have already that would take a lot longer to really think about, I think.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can I come back on just something? Sorry, I know we're kind of going down rabbit holes and stuff, but um, it 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 dawns on me that there's an element in what we were describing a little bit earlier, to come back like 5, 6 minutes ago, where someone creates something enough that other people care about it, right? So there's very much like a selfish sort of act of this thing. And then when someone cares about it, you kind of like there's a flip
Mm.
where it's like, oh, now I'm going in service of the people that showed up in the world, the universe, the thing, like, etc. Right? And so, like, I have startup stuff pretty hardwired into my being at this point in my life, and it's the same thing. I mean, you make a prototype or whatever, and then someone uses it, and then it's like, okay, stop whatever ideas you had and just like try to listen to them as much as possible and give them the things. But there's a nuance too in that where it's like, if you're writing some story like The Matrix or whatever, you still need to then like find the balance, I think, to hit the sweet spot where you're like in service and aware of the audience and who you're doing, you're in service of your users or whatever, but then you're still maintaining kind of a position of leading, right? Like, I am though going to stretch out the world a bit more, and I am going to bring you kind of out here. And I know that you're sensitive to these things, but I'm going to carry you along into something else at the same time. And so I, I wonder if that dynamic is just universal, right? And that like I can remember playing music, coming back to trombones. I mean, it wasn't trombones, but like where it was like about being on stage, right? And being seen for whatever the reasons were that people wanted to be on stage to be seen. Pick one. But then at a certain point it really becomes about music, right? You kind of if you kind of get to that place, you're engaging with the moment, the audience who's reacting. Like there's just an equilibrium spot in the middle of all that stuff that is like meditative, I guess, in nature. I don't know how to describe it, but there's just something like, you know,
Well,
I don't know exactly what I'm saying. I'm just trying to like, I feel like there's like physics almost of relationships, I guess, or something in here that is like, because this is video games and this is all the other stuff we like, all the stuff we consume basically, right? In terms of like our attention is kind of operating around these things. Right. And so where's it coming from and who's it coming from? And do I have their trust? And are they trying to get something from me? And or is this coming from a pure place? Like, is this coming from them? It's coming from real experience that they've gone through and actually know about so that I'm going to get something out of it? Or is this someone who's trying to like get 20 bucks out of me? And it's like, God damn it, it's another Transformer movie. They fucking suck and I wish they were great, but they're not, you know? Um, anyway, I don't know if that makes sense or resonates for anybody, but
It does. We go. Our starting question was, what's the purpose of telling a fictional story? And you're talking about fans, like and world building. When a world like Harry Potter or Star Wars is so successfully built, it's a shared understanding of a place that we live in. Money is a story. Money is a globally accepted myth that we utilize and live in that story. It is a fabrication, um, but it's an extreme example. But to the point of fandom and people occupying and taking ownership of worlds, it becomes personal because you change the expectation or the understanding of a world that you've chosen to live within. Um, the reactions become big.
hmm.
there are two there are two different. So first of all, thank you for all that, and Devin. I couldn't agree more about where you're finding the most interesting part of this, because it is about where we meet in the middle. And we have these things we're passionate about and we can carry them so far, but it's not our goal to just live in a solipsistic universe. That's not why we do this. It is to share, and to build something together. And there there are two kinds of there are two kinds of problems that I think about when I'm, you know, thinking about world building and how we use that in order to mediate our shared reality. And they're the ones that are about us, and they're the ones that are about independent of human existence. So like, we can't solve this is a little bit to what Nick was saying. We can't solve if an asteroid is coming for the planet, no story is going to be able to solve that problem. We can use stories to build consensus around a way to address that problem, but there are different scales of problems that stories just can be the answer to. And those are the ones that, like to Nick's example of money, like, yes, if we all told a different story about what was valuable, then like in the capitalist system we live in, the only thing that is valuable is something that somebody's willing to pay for. It is not, that is the whole thing. And should it be that way? That's a question that we can tell a different story, and then it changes. If you tell a story where the amount of energy, the amount of thought you put into something is the basis for its value, then all of a sudden that is its value. There, full stop, the world has changed. And obviously that is an oversimplification, but those are you can't stop an asteroid with a story, but you can change who is wealthy based on a story. And that's something that I think is a big question at the core of the conversation that we're having now is, and this might lead you towards what you're thinking about next week a little bit. But I think a lot about how those two breeds of problems exist, the buckets of those two breeds of problems. So that's what I got.
I want Hayden, let's go. Try to keep it short because there's actually like a ton of other slides and we got 30 minutes. I just saw the time and I'm like, oh shit, we gotta kind of land the plane here.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, you can't change the nature of the asteroid impact with the story, but I think the story told around the asteroid impact can change the outcome post impact. That makes sense. Like
Absolutely.
The story of what is happening, what could happen, and what can happen are different stories as well.
Can I put it in a different? Because I think that there is a complete different. I'm kind of talking about what performative speech is and how speech actually does inherently have the power to change the world. And the most basic example of this is saying a marriage vow. You through saying that, something in the world has now changed just based on saying a word. And there are many things that fall into a version of that, that we have built this shared reality on ideas that only exist in our heads. Like money only exists in our heads. The asteroid exists whether humans are here or not, right? So,
Sure.
Not after. We do have a few more slides, and we have another game, and but I think if you want to go quick, Justin, I think we've actually touched on a lot.
I think we have, yeah. This slide, which says if an H.G. Wells quote, "If everything is possible, nothing is interesting," is pretty famous quote. But basically, it is a call to be economical in the ways that you change our reality as you build a different world. I'm all for maximalist. It's great for a specific kind of thing, in the same way that an unreliable narrator is great for a specific kind of thing. But as a general rule, the less that you are going to change, the more you can focus on the core of why you've made that change. What does that allow? What kind of story does that allow you to tell? How does that allow you to connect with a problem or a character or yourself in a way that you didn't before you were engaging in this fictional story? And I think I have already said this. The rookie mistake is to have like to use the Star Wars example. If every time a person runs into a problem, they can just wave their hand and the Force happens, that's not good. That doesn't lead to a good story. I actually very much, and I'm going to put myself into a minority bucket right now, I very much did not like the first Dune movie because the characters didn't get to make any choices in that movie. It was just a series of things that moved characters but from one scene to the next without them making choices or overcoming hurdles. It was just somebody would pull them out. So I think that when you are building a world, those are two very very good guidelines to focus on. But all of this is to bring you into the characters. The whole world you've built is just the backdrop to drop your characters into. So yes, here we are. All of this is in service of a story about people and the choices that they make. Yeah, we've said this. The real technological breakthrough of a story. This is a technology that has no machinery except for the human mind. Is to build a bridge between a storyteller and the audience. It is something that was inside of me, and now, if I've done my job right, and you have read it carefully or given it the care that anything we do in the world deserves to be done with care, then there is every chance in the world that you are now slightly different than you were before you read it. In the case of Harry Potter, maybe this has taken a big chunk of your your imagination, and you can now live in that world a little bit moving forward. Yeah, so that's what this is all about. You can keep going. We're at our second prompt now, and maybe we're right on time actually for
Yeah,
the
we're doing
second
good,
prompt.
actually. Awesome.
Nick, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so we put 3 tropes down. And this time we're going to build a story around it. You make the rules. We've given 3 prompts on high-level concepts. And now as we break into groups, pick one of them and build the rules of the world that you can put people in and tell a story about.
And with that, we'll catch you in like 20 minutes. All right, let's do this. Let's do 2-minute pitches of each one's of our stories, and then we're gonna try to like take this home. We got 3-4 more slides.
All right, Justin, which prompt did you guys use?
I've lost them now. They're not in the thing. So forget the prompt. We use the prompt. It's the alien contact, but the twist is that the aliens have not contacted humans. There is in this world we've created, there is the most important relationship in the galaxy is between a alien fungal life form that has come to Earth in the distant past and built a partnership with the ants, which are the most important species. They are the Earth, the core of life on Earth. And that partnership has been building without humans knowing. And in the world that we all know and share, the UFOs in the 1960s were in fact representatives of the fungal race from a different part of the galaxy, and they are concerned about the breakdown of the mycelial network that is happening as a result of human caused climate change, and they are going to recycle all of humanity into the soil. Is what is happening when the story
That's
begins.
the conflict.
Yes.
Love it.
Wow.
Do you want to tell them what prompt 1 really is?
Oh, sure. So these are all vague, very, very deeply generalized worlds that exist in fiction. Prompt 1 is The Forever War, which is a book by Joe Haldeman from a while ago. And in that world where there's like subspeed galactic space travel, they make contact with a different species, and there is a reaction back on Earth of war must be in the future. It changes the entirety course of human civilization. But because these spaceships are going over across great distances and without the benefit of warp drives, one human's life in cryostasis between different battles takes place over 1,000 years, and you see what happens to life on Earth during that time. That's prompt 1.
Did anyone do prompt 2?
No takers.
No takers. Prompt 2 was The Matrix. So the other group, how many groups were there? Were there 2 groups or 1?
3 groups.
3 groups? We did prompt 3. What was the other group?
Prompt 3.
Go for it. You guys want to go?
Yeah, we did. If we're naming the movies, we figured out prompt 3 must be Jurassic Park.
It is.
It took us a little while, but we got there. We didn't get to a story. Well, we kind of got to a story. I'll let Lucia take over if she wants to. Or Mika or Peter, because I feel like I don't have a grip on what
I feel like you said the story at the end. Our story was not as refined as the previous story, but basically there was a benevolent woman billionaire twist at the beginning. We thought that would be a nice twist, but she is like genetically manipulating people to live forever because she thinks that that would be helpful, but also she wants people to continue to like buy into her like empire of products. We didn't say what. But we thought there were 2 branches. Either rich people are the ones that are like living forever because they have lots of resources, they're really unhappy, it like collapses lots of like industry, like pharmaceutical industry, or poor people are the ones who are living forever because she's trying to like help them, like, oh, you live in like a place where you might die early, now you live forever, but they're just like exploited workers who live forever and they're really sad. And that was our world, basically.
Thank you. We did a crazy billionaire, definitely not modeled exactly off after Elon Musk, who decided to clone himself and optimize each one for very specific purposes in their day-to-day life. So there was father billionaire, there was CEO billionaire, there was etc. Therefore forcing him to realize the lack of control that actually he had, and facing the individual aspects of his personality in their extremes.
This sounds a little bit like multiple personality disorder, the musical.
It's the not funny version of Multiplicity. But that's what we got, and thank you all for sharing those. We have a couple closing thoughts, and we're about to run out of time, so we'll run through those.
Yeah, I mean, this is just playing the hits, going back full circle to the beginning, which is that we tell stories to process the world around us, and when we change the ways in which that world works in order to crack it open so that we can see it in a different way, or come at it with some of the baggage that we carry with us removed, it can bring problems into a different light for us and allow us to grasp things that we might not have otherwise. It's just part of the work of being a person. This is just one of those tools that is very basic for building our communities, for sharing the things that are important to us with each other in the way that, one example Devin gave of a great story is a meal. It is something that comes from tradition and comes from something that you work really hard to perfect and to share with someone else. You don't do it just to have it for yourself. I think that, and that leads right to the quote, "You are what you eat," which is something that I say a lot myself, because the things that you consume change you. They like, if you eat nothing but junk food, then you're going to feel bad, and you're not going to be able to have the exercise to have the energy to do the things that you would want to do. Whereas if you feed yourself with great stories and with connection to something bigger than yourself, something that brings you joy and life and surprises, and that's what the stories that I love do. And you can keep going right on to the next slide. It is all a tool to build empathy, to help us explore different perspectives and different situations, and to connect with the fictional characters on an emotional level that we then make real when we carry the story with us as we move forward in our lives. And you can keep going. Yeah, this a story. This is a technology. We're in Jam Club talking about building worlds. A story is a technology to build a bridge between one mind and another. That's what this is at the beginning and end. So, you get lost in the world, but don't lose perspective, because we're trying to bridge some impossible gaps in our world, and we need all the tools we got. Yeah, that's the big question.
That's kind
I'll
of
throw
where
it
we
back to you guys.
wanted to land. Sorry to cut you off, Justin.
You're great.
But yeah, I think that well, first off, thanks, Justin. This was amazing.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been really inspiring to be here.
I really appreciate all the time you put into it. Appreciate the energy Nick put into it. Those two kind of tag team this thing to get it across the finish line. It was awesome. I think that the context in which this conversation is taking place is within the context of Jam Club. What we're hoping to do next week is to use all this technology to explore questions, right? Like if you actually had a question that you're carrying, whatever that is today, and then you came next week and you're like, cool, so how am I going to build a world that's going to now pick this apart, right? What are the questions that you're carrying now? What are the stories that you're carrying now that you should be kind of developing or understanding? Or so maybe that's like the meditation for the week, is just to kind of think about that. And like choose something that matters to you. Have some skin in the game. And then that'll make it so much more powerful next week when we actually come at this and go like, okay, well, like, how do I build a world around this where I'm going to explore this and take this thing and spin it different directions? And because I think ultimately this could be innovation work done through world building around different things, right? This could be a workshop. We could go do it anywhere, literally. And so, yeah, I think like I would invite us to sort of go into next week in that mindset and then see what kind of comes out of it. But yeah, does that sound good to everybody? Go.
Yeah, next week will be its own act of speculative fiction. It'll be a bit of an experiment. We're going to unpack a little bit of, at the beginning, an experiment that Justin and I actually ran at Google X around this concept of how relating to stories can unlock the practical innovation of things. No facts, just speculative stories, and some interesting perspectives, and hopefully we can all play with that together.
That's what we got. I guess the last thing I'll just say is we have a Discord. So if some of you aren't on it and you want to join us there, it's kind of where we hang out during the week. It's not as active as, maybe, whatever. But yeah, feel free to drop things in there, or like cool videos you find, or book recommendations, or whatever.
Adam is the most active.
Didn't mean to throw you any shade. And yeah, thanks. I really enjoyed spending this evening with you guys. I think you guys are all great. And it's it's just a lot of fun. And with that, see you next week, friends.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Justin.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Justin.